fundamental principles of freedom, national self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Sunday afternoon. Kind of losing track of time here. Hope everybody's having a great weekend and looking forward to a great week in front of us. All right, we have a lot to talk about today, and let me just see what's going on my screen here, get everything aligned. I don't need that. I've got that. All right, so I'm in London, still in London. I will be here until tomorrow morning. Then I go to Spain, where I'm going to be on vacation for I'm going to be on vacation for a week or so with my wife. So probably no shows during vacation. We'll see. So probably next show will be on a week from today. A week from today when I get back to California. God, I don't live in California. When I get back to Puerto Rico. So, yes, so we'll probably go a week without a show. You'll just have to survive somehow. Today we're going to talk about political corruption. We'll talk about Hunter Biden and Jared Kushner and Hillary Clinton and, I don't know, Al Gore and Willie Brown. I don't know if anybody remembers Willie Brown and whatever, politicians generally and corruption in politics. And then once we finish talking about that, we'll talk about a article in Barry Weiss's Substack on BDS, Antisemitism, and Harvard University. So that should be an interesting topic as well. And I encourage you to, as usual, sign up for Barry Weiss's Substack and read the stuff on Barry Weiss's Substack. It's super educational, super interesting, super worthwhile. All right, so I've been in the UK. I gave 2 talks. I gave a talk at a girls' high school. I love giving talks at girls' high schools. It was on capitalism, and they were pretty feisty. A couple of socialist girls there, and discussion was really good. Unfortunately, just when it was getting really good, the fire alarm went off and they evacuated the school, and it was like, who'd I strangle here? So that was too bad, but it was great, and they'll have me back. And I love these high schools. I love being able to speak at high schools. And then in the evening, I gave a talk at the Institute of Economic Affairs, which was really an event put on by the Hayek Society of LSE, UCL is University College London, and King's College. And the reason they did it at the Institute of Economic Affairs was that King's College, you remember King's College? King's College is the place that Antifa attacked me and Sargon and Akkad and shut down the school and threw smoke bombs and got into fight with the audience, or my audience really beat them up, and all of that happened and all of that. Anyway, I am now deemed too risky to have on King's College. The only way they would have me in King's College is no outsiders, only students could attend, and B, the students would have to hire private security in order to have me. So there you go. So no King's College. LSE, I can't remember what the excuse was. UCL had some excuse. In other words, I cannot speak at a London university. I have officially, well, I guess it's unofficially, I have, in reality, been canceled by London University. I can still speak at Exeter. I can still speak at Durham. I can still speak at Plymouth. I can still speak at Sussex and all these other schools. Bristol, I guess, maybe. But I cannot speak in London at universities in London. I've been canceled. I'm a security threat. I'm really, really, really dangerous, and can't have that. So we'll see where that goes. Actually, I'll connect that with the topic we have at the end, because the whole anti-Semitism, anti-Israel, anti-Zionism, the whole BDS stuff is all connected to why they won't have me on campuses over here as well. So here I am. I'm canceled. So you haven't canceled me yet, and YouTube hasn't canceled me yet, and you guys are still supporting me, so we're good. Thank you, Jonathan Honing, for the support. Really, really appreciate it. Let's see. So that was Thursday. Then Friday, I got to appear on Mark Dolan's show to talk about, what did we talk about on Friday? God, I can't even remember. So we've been on television twice now. One on Mark Dolan's show, that's on Friday nights, and I've been that was my third or fourth appearance on Mark Dolan's show, maybe fourth. I can't keep track anymore. Fourth appearance. Yeah, fourth appearance. It's terrific. Mark is great. And we talked about the NHS. Thank you, Jennifer. I have like a memory. There's no really way to define my memory because it's so pathetically short that, anyway, I have no memory. So, yes, we had a kind of an on-air debate about the NHS, which is pretty amazing because the NHS is like religion in the UK. You're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to challenge it. You're not allowed to question it. And Mark Dolan had me on saying, privatize it all, get rid of the NHS. And the two other panelists who were supposed to debate me were like debating me, but it was clear that they were weak and they didn't really have anything to say. So I dominated the conversation. So the dominant voice in the conversation was somebody who believed the NHS should be done away with, which in the UK is like, I don't know, it would be like in the Middle Ages, going out and declaring God as being dead. It's stunning. So I encourage you to watch the segment with Mark Dolan on the NHS. I thought it was good. We had a nurse there. We had a doctor there. And then last night, I was going to do a show, but then by the time I got back from this, it was too late. So it was late and I was tired. And the Celtics were playing. Of course, they lost, but they were playing. So last night I was on Neil Oliver's show. Neil Oliver is somebody that Jennifer has been really excited about having me go on his show. She's talked to me about Neil Oliver a few times. So I went on Neil Oliver's show yesterday talking about political corruption, and that's really gives rise to the topic that we're going to be talking about today. So is there political corruption? And to what extent does the Hunter Biden laptop prove or indicate or support the idea that there is political corruption in America? We know there's political corruption all over the world. We know there's political corruption in third world countries. We know there's political corruption all over the place. But is there political corruption in the United States? And I think the unequivocal answer to that, given where we are today, is absolutely yes. But it's not old style kind of political corruption. It's not the kind of political corruption where suitcases filled with cash get transferred from person to person and get shuffled around. It's not the political corruption where people get into smoke-filled back rooms and cut deals. This is political corruption that in some sense is far more visible. Everybody knows about it. It's everywhere. And while people complain about it, nobody actually cares. And nobody does anything about it. And nobody's prosecuted for it. It's political corruption in a sense is legal. So let's take Hunter Biden. So, from what we know, and there's a lot we don't know, like the FBI has had the files for 2 years. I mean, I believe that, a lot of this stuff is questionable in terms of its legality, but it's not obvious that it's illegal. The FBI has had the laptop for 2 years now. I don't think the FBI is so corrupt as they would not prosecute Hunter Biden. I know you guys think they are, but I don't. I think that if there's clear example of corruption, what does corruption mean? So take the Hunter Biden laptop. Hunter Biden laptop shows that Hunter Biden got a job. Two issues. One is that he got a job on a big Ukrainian company for which he had no skill, no particular ability to contribute, no knowledge of the field, and yet he was on the board of directors and earned a substantial salary, if you will, income from his being on the board of directors. Right? There's actually three issues around the laptop. We'll get to the third one as well. And okay, so he got this job because, during this time when the Obama administration was warming up to Ukraine, and of course, this is a time. I'll get to that, Luca. This is a time where the Obama administration is warming up to Ukraine, and of course, Biden is the vice president at the time. So the real issue here, it seems that there was some kind of exchange. Ukrainians gave Biden this lucrative position where he makes good money, and maybe the Obama administration did a few things for Ukraine, and maybe for this Ukrainian company, more broadly for Ukraine, and all this gets settled in back rooms. Is that corruption? Is that corruption you can take it to court and prove? Is that more than what happens pretty much every day, all day in our foreign relations? Or take the other flip side of this. I know some dealing with the Chinese, where the Chinese invest in projects that Hunter Biden is involved in, or in an investment fund, and what they're asking for in emails, what it looks like is a meeting with Joe Biden, and this is after he's already out of power. He's already not vice president. Is that corruption? Clearly, it's quid pro quo. Clearly, they're getting something and something in return. But to what extent is this illegal? To what extent can anybody today go to jail? And again, to what extent is this done all the time? I'll give you an example. Not of Hunter Biden. Hillary Clinton gives a $250,000 speech in front of Goldman Sachs partners. $250,000. Now, Hillary Clinton is a good speaker. Hillary Clinton, for some people, maybe has some interesting things to say. But $250,000? I'm a better speaker than Hillary Clinton, and I have a lot better things to say. Why is she getting $250,000 from Goldman Sachs? Well, maybe, just maybe, I'm just speculating here, with anticipation that Hillary Clinton is about to run for president and will probably beat Donald Trump and will probably become president. And given that Goldman Sachs has just paid her $250,000, they will have access to her administration. They might be able to pick up a phone call and talk to her assistant or talk to her directly as president. Now, is this corruption? Yes. Is this prosecutable? Probably not. Is this something can be proven in court? No. Is this something that's done every day? Yes. I'll give you one more example and then we'll go on. Because so far I've only given you examples of Democrats. So I was just reading in preparation for my TV appearance. I was reading an article. It was published in the Wall Street Journal, but there were also articles in Rolling Stones, New York Times. Across the political spectrum, you'll find this, except you won't find it on Fox, of course. Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Donald Trump. Jared Kushner, who is involved in many of the wheelings and dealings in the Middle East, including, by the way, very involved in lobbying Congress to approve a $113 billion arms deal to the Saudis, which many Republicans objected to, Saudis after all, and these were very sophisticated arms. The same Jared Kushner has just launched a private equity fund. His first private equity fund. He's never had a private equity fund. He's a real estate developer. His family develops real estate. I don't know what Jared himself does. But Jared has started a private equity fund. He is trying to raise $7 billion. Now, that's a big private equity fund, particularly on your first go. He can't get the money. Americans are not giving him any money because he has no experience. He has no particular knowledge. Why would you invest in Jared Kushner? He has no particular skill set that is useful necessarily for private equity. Unless, of course, you're the Saudis. And Jared Kushner has been very, very good to you in the past. And who knows? Donald Trump might run again for president and get reelected, and Jared Kushner will still be his son-in-law. And the Saudis have written Jared Kushner a $2 billion check. $2 billion. That is a lot of money for anybody, even the Saudis. Reports from Saudi deliberations suggest that many of the independent directors of the Saudi investment fund objected, claiming that Jared Kushner was not qualified, was not skilled, this was the first time, it's too much money to risk, and that the Crown Prince himself, the guy who had that journalist slaughtered, cut into pieces at the Turkish embassy, in the Saudi Arabian embassy in Turkey, that guy, the guy who became very close friends with Jared Kushner, who helped make that into not a big deal in the United States. He insisted that the funds be provided to Jared Kushner, and Jared Kushner is now, not only is Jared Kushner getting $2 billion, he's getting it at a pretty sweet fee structure. He's getting it at 1.25% annual fees plus 20% of all profits. So Jared Kushner will be getting from the Saudis directly $25 million a year for the life of the fund, and then 20% of any profits he generates. Now, we'll see if he generates any profits. Call me skeptical, but that's the deal. Interesting, too, is that at the same time, Steve Mnuchin, you remember Steve Mnuchin? Steve Mnuchin was the Treasury Secretary under Trump. Now, Steve Mnuchin has a long history in finance, was a partner at Goldman Sachs, a senior partner at Goldman Sachs, has raised some private equity fund. He also raised a private equity fund. And he also asked the Saudis for money. And surprise, surprise, the Saudis gave him money. They only gave him $1 billion. Jared got $2. Mnuchin, the finance guy, only got $1. And he got worse terms than Jared. They're only paying him 1% fees, not 1.25% fees. I don't know. Is this corruption? Is this, what is it? Quid pro quo? Is it quid pro quo? Yeah, we all know it. Does anybody care? No. Is anybody prosecuted? No. Does this happen every day? Yes. Do you remember Willie Brown? Most of you don't know who Willie Brown is. Some of you who lived in California probably know Willie Brown. Willie Brown entered politics a poor man. He became the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the state of California. He's a Democrat. Used to wear the nicest suits anybody wore. These are multiple $1,000 suits. One of the things that Willie Brown became famous for is being the guy that Kamala Harris slept with in order to get a position in the Democratic Party. Willie Brown left politics. He then became mayor of San Francisco when he was term limited out of the House of Representatives of California. He left politics a millionaire. A millionaire. So many politicians. Look at the Obamas. Obama came into politics, became president of the United States. He was a university professor. He had no income. I mean, he had a small income. He did okay, but low middle class, maybe straight middle class. What did he just buy? A $20 million home on Long Island or something? And that's just a fraction of his wealth? Where did they get $20 million? Where does that money come from? How does that happen? It's, did the Bush family benefit from George Bush being president? And it seems to have gotten much, 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 much worse. Every year, it seems to get worse. You know how rich Al Gore is? You think it's because the documentary made a lot of money? I think his father was very rich. But was his father a senator? How does this happen? What happens? Scott says some corruption is worse than others. Yeah. I mean, if you want to go left and right, then I think the Kushner corruption is much worse than a Hunter Biden corruption. Hunter Biden, it didn't make any difference with Ukraine. Who cares about Ukraine in that context? Kushner is selling out to the Saudis. Was the Saudi frontman in the Trump administration. Saudi Arabia, the number 2 funder of terrorism. Really? I mean, you guys want to pretend that only corruption on the left matters, as usual, right? Only the left is bad. You can do that if you want, Scott. Not on the Yaron Brook show. Here, we treat all corruption equally. So, how does this happen? Well, it happens inevitably. This is not an aberration. This is not strange. This is inevitable. This is cronyism. This is what it means. This is how it works. And why is cronyism inevitable? Because we live in a mixed economy. Because politicians have massive amounts of power. They determine, the fate of whole industries, whole nations. It's truly stunning. Truly stunning. How much government is involved in our economy today, how much regulations and controls and tax loopholes there are. And people need to survive. Business will need to survive. So business funds government. It funds politicians. It hands them the equivalent of suitcases of cash. I knew one of the leaders of the Republican Party in Congress. I think for a while he was the minority leader when the Republicans were a minority. He was a Tea Party conservative, but not quite conservative enough. He was very, very prominent in the Republican Party. And I met him on several occasions. He knows me. He knows Ayn Rand. He was quite friendly, useless but friendly. And he lost a Republican primary to somebody else I know, funnily enough, a crazy religionist conservative, a little nuts, total, who ultimately lost it to Democrat, right? Anyway, this is so when he lost, it took about 1 month before he got a job at a Wall Street firm. And I think his pay, his like salary was over $1 million. And then he had bonuses on top of that. Now, is this because of his skill in finance? No. Is this because he's like super smart, like off the charts? Probably not. A smart guy, but probably not that smart in the context of this particular Wall Street firm. What skill set did he have? What was literally worth millions of dollars? Well, his contacts. his contacts in politics, his contacts in Washington. He had people in Washington. And every investment bank needs people in Washington. And they're willing to pay for people in Washington. Politicians become lobbyists. Politicians become partners in Wall Street. They become lawyers. The deal with big business and government. Because government is so involved in the economy. And business is going to protect itself. So it's going to pay. It's going to hire anybody it needs to in order to protect itself and ultimately use the legal system, not just to protect itself, but to benefit themselves. And there's no way around it. You can lecture them businessmen all day long, and they will still try to use the political system when they can to benefit themselves at others' expense. And at the same time, politicians will get rich. You know, Obama didn't get rich because he got a suitcase of cash. He just gets, I don't know, $250,000, maybe $1 million per speech. Again, not because he's that impressive, but because he has power. He has power. And who knows what favors he did whom when he was president that he was paid for later on. Again, I don't think he got the cash while he was president, but later on, so that you couldn't connect the two. So Biden, Obama, I mean, Bush and Trump were rich before they entered the presidency, so probably less of that, but the Trump family is benefiting. Kushner is benefiting. I'm sure the Bush family all benefited. As long as government has power over business, business will want a say, and business will pay for a say. And by paying for a say, we will have corruption. As long as politicians give foreign aid, massive quantities of money to foreign aid, there will be corruption. Why are you giving X to this country and not Y to that country? As long as politicians are giving large arms deals and other deals and trade deals, you think the trade deals are not affected with this? There will be corruption. The only way to get rid of corruption is to get government out of economics, is to get government out of having power over these decisions, of having a foreign policy that is pro-US, period. Having tariffs that are zero and therefore no favors to be given. Having taxes, for example, corporate taxes that are zero. Or if you don't want zero, make them flat with no deductions. Some really, really simple revenue tax or something like that. That doesn't allow for any loopholes or any deductions or anything that politicians can game and businesses can game. You want to get corruption out of politics? Eliminate regulations, or at least, again, get them really, really small and really simple, straightforward, that anybody can read them, anybody can understand them, so that there's no gaming of the system to be had. Limit government to its proper role, protecting our individual rights, not violating them, protecting our lives, not squeezing us for more, squeezing us for another dime. Of course, some politicians are corrupt in the sense that suitcases, and we've seen that. We've seen a number of politicians get caught with huge quantities of cash in their refrigerators. So, you know, we could continue to complain about Hunter Biden's laptop or Jared Kushner's sweet deal with the Saudis. But it's still going to happen. Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change until we actually have the guts, until we actually have the balls, until we actually have the courage to go back to the vision of the founding fathers of what this government is supposed to do, and shrink it to size, limit its scope. We're not. We can't rely on the Supreme Court to do that. They don't understand. We can't rely on our politicians to do that. It is us, the people, who have to change. It is you who have to go out there and educate your fellow Americans. We need a government we need a separation of state from economics. We need a state that does not get involved in economic decisions and therefore is not involved in money. And therefore, there's no reason to bribe them. There's no purpose of corrupting. How about we reduce foreign aid to zero? That would be nice. That would be good. All right. I see I have to remind you guys about the super chat. I didn't do it in the beginning of the show, so you guys are kind of. We'll get to the anti-Semitism in a minute. What's up, guys? We're like half an hour into the show, and what have we raised? $40 maybe. So first, if somebody could keep track of the dollars, that'd be great. With me traveling and everything, Catherine Mendez is not being here to help promote the super chat. We do have a goal of $600. $40 is a long way for 600. So jump in with questions. I will be taking questions soon. We're going to go over the Barry Weiss's article now about anti-Semitism at Harvard and at some other universities as well. I see I lose people because I'm talking about the super chat, so people click off. We don't want to hear you. I want to talk about money. But yes, use the super chat to ask questions, make contributions. That's how you support the show. That's how you make sure you get as many shows as you do. Yes, I know I've kind of slacked off the last couple of months because of travel and because of being sick. But once I get back home, expect 4 shows a week, back to the 4 shows a week schedule that we have had before. All right. Let's see. Yeah. All right. Jeffrey Miller. Let's just do this quickly. Jeffrey Miller says for $20 to soften the blow from the Celtics game. It was brutal. They had it in the last few seconds. They could have won the game, and they blew it. But to soften the blow from the Celtics game, but enjoy having your team in the playoffs. I do enjoy having my team in the playoffs. I'm a Kings fan. Sorry, Jeffrey. The last time they made the playoffs, the iPhone didn't exist. I know. But, when you're a Celtics fan, you expect them to win the championship every year. It's not enough making the playoffs. They have to be in the finals. Unfortunately, it won't be against the Lakers, but it might be against the Warriors, and that would be a great finals. But they have to get past Milwaukee, and Milwaukee is a damn good team. And they didn't play well yesterday, so the fact that they only lost by 2 points is pretty amazing. And they had so many opportunities, including at the very last second, to tie the game, and they couldn't pull it off. So it was quite disappointing. Anonymous user, thank you. RDF, thank you. Free Trade, thank you. Jeffrey says, this is for the Boca Rones, something like that. If you're anywhere in Spain or Portugal, let's serve them. So I think Jeffrey will appreciate this because he is a chef, a fantastic chef at a fantastic restaurant that he owns. I'm going to be in Barcelona Tuesday night. I'm going to give you the name of the restaurant because I think you'll know it. We're going to go to El Salar de Can Roca, which is considered one of the best restaurants in the world, in Giron, Spain. We're going to spend the night in Giron. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's like a restaurant I've been wanting to go to for years, and we finally have an opportunity. So that'll be terrific. And then on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so that's like a 3-star restaurant. Then on Wednesday, we're going to a 3 Michelin star restaurant in Barcelona, and then we're dropping out at 2 stars on Thursday and 2 stars on Friday. So we're doing 6, 8, 10 Michelin stars in 4 days. So bocones are anchovies. I like anchovies, and I love Spanish food, and I like Portuguese food. But I particularly like these kind of fancy Spanish restaurants. I think Spanish restaurants do the best kind of fancy food. Anyway, That's going to be my week, eating great meals at great restaurants with my amazing wife. Jeffrey says, oh, that's one of the best restaurants in the world. Yeah, I know. I'll put money towards a review the next time you do a show. Would love to. I'll review all 4 restaurants, give recommendations. There was one restaurant I tried to get to in Spain, in Barcelona, also considered one of the best in the world, Disfruto, something like that. But I couldn't get a reservation. I tried all the different levers I had, and I couldn't pull a reservation. Anyway, all right, let's shift gears here. We're going to shift gears to Barry Weiss's article. So I don't know if you noticed, but this week, the Harvard Crimson is the student newspaper, the undergraduate newspaper at Harvard. Very, very difficult to become an editor at this newspaper. These are the top students at the top university in the country. This is an amazing place. It's always been a bastion of debate, discussion. And this week, the Harvard Crimson has come out in favor of the BDS movement. Now, what is the BDS movement? Josh says, the Bucks Celtics series is really exciting. Let's go Bucks. God, no. I'll give you back your $20. God, Bucks can't win that game. What is the BDS movement? The BDS movement is a movement to basically boycott all goods from Israel, to have nothing to do with Israel, because Israel is a racist, apartheid, disgusting, offensive, horrible country that is committing genocide against the Palestinians, and therefore worse than Russia, worse than China, certainly worse in Saudi Arabia, where, remember, they stone women and they jail atheists. Worse than, I don't know, Iran. Worse than any country on planet Earth, because there is no other student-led movement to boycott any country in the world other than Israel. So Israel must be the worst country in the world. They must be the worst violator of individual rights in the world, and it's a horrible, horrible place. So the BDS movement has been around for years. The leaders of the BDS movement recently have basically said that they don't believe Israel should exist. There should be a Palestine there. There should be an Arab state there, but there should be no Jewish state. There should be no Israel. So it really is a movement for the elimination of Israel. The BDS movement would much rather support Syria, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Palestine, or Turkey. Thank you, anonymous user, for making the list. Right? Those countries would be better than having a Israel that is democratic, relatively free state. Oh God, we've got a Marxist-Leninist on the chat. How fun is that? Go for it, guys. Give him hell. Here's a country, Israel, that has elections. It actually has a Islamist political party right now as part of the governing coalition. Here's a country in which its Arab citizens have, almost complete equal rights to Jewish populations. Now, I wish Israel were better, but it's about as good as any Western country is. Here's a country that has basic property rights protection, basic contract law protection. That's basically a free country and a civilized country. A country with the rule of law, the country with the Supreme Court, the country where you can appeal your case, a country that has a rule of law. Yes, it is a country that occupies territory in which people don't have a vote. Why? Well, because those people are trying to kill Israelis, have been trying to kill Israelis for decades and decades and decades, really going back over 100 years. The Palestinians have rejected every peace deal proposed to them because they don't want peace. What they want, or at least the leadership wants, is the destruction of the state of Israel. It's what they've always wanted. It's the only thing they want. The leadership of the Palestinians is authoritarian, anti-gay, for example. Gays are regularly killed murdered in the Palestinian Authority with no consequences. The Palestinians are ruled today by Hamas, an Islamist regime that kills heretics, that is quite open to stoning women, chopping off the hands of thieves. Oh, that's the Saudis. Oh, same thing. But of course, leftists and campuses are tolerant of that. Saudi Arabia is fine. Hamas is fine. Hezbollah is fine. Force women to cover up completely, that's fine. No problem. But defend yourself. Have the courage to actually defend yourself. Have the courage to stand up for your values. Have the courage to stand up for Western values. Have democracy. Have rule of law. Have property rights. That is the definition of evil, and that must be suppressed. So we must boycott that. BDS is the ugliest form of anti-civilization, anti-West, and I would even say anti-Jewish advocacy today in the United States and the world. Lucas says, don't forget to notice that the Arab Israelis are in the chamber. Yeah, as I said, they're part of the Knesset, the parliament, they're part of the government today, in a sense that they don't sit on the government because they're Islamists, but they are part of the governing coalition. They are judges. They're in every profession. Now, again, I'm not saying there's no discrimination in Israel any more than I'm saying there's no discrimination in America. There is. And it's sad when there is. And sometimes the law, a bad law, Israel is way too nationalist for my liking. Israel is way too Jewish for my liking. But it's not that much different than any Western country. And its virtues far, far, far exceed its vices. It is a bastion of civilization in a barbaric area. Again, in an area that treats its women like they did in the Dark Ages, treats the rule of law like anybody did in the Dark Ages, no rule of law. Authoritarian, brutal, religionist. Israel is relatively secular and relatively capitalist. So why did the Crimson support BDS? Because of the horrors that Israel commits. And in particular, they mentioned the fact that there was an exhibit on campus that brought them to Jesus, in a sense. There was the moment that really clicked for them. They suddenly realized how evil was because of this exhibit. So what was in this exhibit? And here, again, courtesy of, I'm going to share these with you. This is courtesy of Barry Weiss, Barry Weiss's website, but photos from the exhibit. So notice the exhibit. The exhibit does not present facts. What facts could be presented? The facts are all in Israel's side. But as the woman who wrote the article on Barry Weiss's site says, it used to be that these placards would list all the crimes Israel's committed. There are no crimes here. There's no list. They're just images. So on the left, all you have is a placard, and this moved the Harvard students to change their minds about BDS and become anti-Israeli. These placards did. The left one says, Zionism is racism. Settlers, colonialism, white supremacy, apartheid. White supremacy. Are all Jews in Israel white? Is my wife white? What is white? Who's the supremacist here? God. Are the Yemenite Jews white? Are the Ethiopian Jews white? I mean, these people are ignorant, stupid, and clueless. So yes, there's a list of supposed crimes. Apartheid. So I visited South Africa when there was apartheid. It was worse than Jim Crow South. Beaches for whites only, beaches for blacks only. Bathrooms for whites, bathrooms for blacks. No mixing of the races in terms of living. None of that exists in Israel. There are no Jewish beaches and Arab beaches. It's not even clear that the races are different, so racism is hard to apply here. Are they the same race or different races? Aren't they all Semites? There were no fountains for Arabs and fountain for Jews. There's no separation. Now, yes, most of the Arabs lived in Arab villages and Jews live in Jewish villages, but there are Arabs who live in Tel Aviv. I lived in a city, Haifa, which was always mixed. I think I've told you half the engineering students in my class were Arabs. And most of them girls. Surprising. Most of them Christian Arabs, but Arabs. Really? Apartheid? Do you know what the term means? Do you have any concept what it looked like? And you could say this is ignorance, but it's not ignorance. This is propaganda. Or take the image in the middle there. I assume you can all see the images. Right? You can see the images? Yeah, you can see the image. Take the image in the middle there. I don't know how well you can see it, but it is an image of, let me just see. It's an image of a faceless police officer bearing a truncheon over the bodies of dark-skinned people behind bars with bullet holes in their chests. I think the bullet holes look like a Jewish star, but I'm not sure. Star of David. Couldn't get quite close enough to see. Their blood is dripping onto an overturned American flag. Now, what does this mean? What does this have to do with Israel? I mean, it looks like exact copy of an image that's been circulating around as a meme by a variety of different Iranian-backed groups. So you mean the American left is circulating Iranian propaganda? That couldn't be, but they are. And if you think about it, what is this suggested? Is American police brutality that is suggested by this image, is it Israel's fault? Or maybe it's the fault of the Jews, because Israel doesn't have a lot of impact on American domestic policy, but every conspiracy theory claims that the Jews do. Or take the other two panels, one in this image. Let me show you the other image. I have to play around here with the different windows that I have. No, not there. Not there. Sorry, we'll get there. Here's the other image for what it's worth. Well, here in the other one, there were two images of doctors with pill bottles and some reference to health and the denial of health being the worst crime possible. Does Israel deny health to the Palestinians? As far as I can tell, no. I mean, Palestinians that need urgent care that cannot be provided in Palestinian hospitals are often taken into Israeli hospitals. Even patients from the Gaza Strip, the worst of the worst among the Palestinians, are taken into Israeli hospitals when they need serious care. So what are they referring to? Well, this is a dig on a often debunked myth, lie, that Israel withheld COVID drugs, COVID vaccines from Palestinians, and that Israelis harvest Palestinian organs. Now, this harvesting of Palestinian organs is an old, traditional Christian myth, spread by anti-Semitic Christians through the Dark Ages and into the 20th century, about Jews killing children, eating children, drinking their blood, harvesting organs. This is displayed at Harvard, this kind of anti-Semitic horror. Then there's a panel. You can see it. Ooh, it's in the previous one. You can see it there. No, it's not in this one. It's in this one. Yeah, the second one from the left. It looks like gray-clad prisoners with a Palestinian flag behind an Auschwitz-style barbed wire fencing, along with a boxcar train headed for a bricked-up destination marked with an Israeli flag, suggesting concentration camps and the annihilation of the population, using explicit Holocaust imagery to portray Israel as a committer of Holocaust. I mean, does it get any more anti-Semitic than this? Does it get it any more anti-intellectual than this? But this is today's left. It's not about ideas. It's about emotion. It's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's about who's suffering or is perceived to be suffering. Note that the Harvard Crimson decided to publish this week after the last 2-3 weeks of a series of terrorist attacks in Israel, where 15 civilians are being slaughtered, killed, knife attacks, an axe, guns. Just horror. And yet, Israel is the villain. Not the Palestinians committing these horrific acts. Israel is the villain. So much of a villain that it's compared to apartheid and to the Nazis. Compared to the Nazis. Indeed, just this week, the foreign minister of Russia said that the worst anti-Semites in the world are Jews. And after all, didn't Hitler have some Jewish blood? Implying in his statement that the Jews were somehow responsible for their own genocide, for their own Holocaust. This is the foreign minister. Supposedly, in a private conversation, Putin has apologized for that. But today, I guess you can be anti-Semitic. Nobody bats an eyelid. Nobody cares. Certainly the left doesn't care. The left has adopted anti-Semitism as one of its calling cards. And, murder in Israel is considered nothing trivial. It's considered an act of justice on the part of the Palestinians, even when it's particularly brutal. Axe murders, knife murders, of just people sitting at coffee shops, sitting at a bar, just walking, filling up gas in Beersheba a few weeks ago, filling up gas and getting attacked by a knife. The world doesn't care. On the contrary, it's just another opportunity to criticize Israel, its policies, its civilized nature. Yes. No, the apology, Luca, was private. So Luca says it was not a private conversation. It was an interview on Italian television. The Russian foreign minister, what he said was public. It was on Italian television. It was an interview. Putin's apology, supposed apology, happened in private. So Putin has not made a public apology. His apology was supposed to be in a phone call with the Prime Minister of Israel, who, if you believe that it actually happened. Now, this growing anti-Semitism on the part of the left in the U.S. is everywhere. At Rutgers University, another one of these great universities, right? Last month, on Yom HaShoah. Yom HaShoah is the day Jews commemorate the Holocaust. So on the Holocaust Remembrance Day, the Jewish fraternity, AEPI, engaged in an annual ritual reading of names of the Holocaust victims. And they get eggs thrown at the house. Now it's become a tradition now to throw eggs at the Jewish fraternity house on Holocaust Remembrance Day at Rutgers University. Who are these people? Who are these anti-Semites? At Rutgers last week, people leaving a rally that was defending Al-Aqsa and defend Palestine, and came over again to this same fraternity house, and they were shouting and spitting at people and calling them baby killers. Baby killers. Again, another blood libel the Jews are being, blamed for forever. I mean, this is not Israelis. This is not going after Israel. This is not volunteering to go fight for the Palestinians. This is attacking Jews in your own campus. Why? Most Jews are not that friendly to Israel. Most Jews are not that pro-Israel. Most Jews support a lot of these leftist causes. Doesn't matter. They're Jews. At the University of Santa Cruz, a couple of months ago, where the author's name is, who is the author's name? Dara Horn, where the author was speaking. Multiple university buildings were vandalized with spray paint images of swastikas and nooses. Now, historically, we would have assumed these were some kind of white supremacists, anti-Semitic white supremacists on campus. But that's highly unlikely for two reasons. One, it's Santa Cruz. But second, it's clear that these were students. How do we know that they were students who sprayed these swastikas? And how do we know they were leftist students who sprayed the swastikas? Because the spray cans were actually found in the recycling bins on campus. I guess at the university. So, I mean, white supremacists don't recycle. I mean, she writes here, which is pretty funny. She says, what are your politics? And for many leftists today, or some leftists today at least, it's kill the Jews, save the turtles. As I said, environmentalism is going to be part of whatever authoritarianism we have in the future. And scarily enough, even in America, anti-Semitism might be part of it as well. As Swarthmore, another one of these fancy liberal arts schools, they chanted, Swarthmore to Gaza, globalize the Intifada. This is a chant. From Swarthmore to Gaza, globalize the Intifada. They got their rhymes going. But do you know what an Intifada is? Do you know what the Palestinian Intifada looked like? In the second Palestinian Intifada, in the early 2000s, by the way, an Intifada was launched after Yasser Arafat refused a peace deal offered to him by the Americans, by Bill Clinton, which basically gave him 97% of everything he wanted. He turned it down, and he launched the Second Intifada. The Second Intifada, which lasted years, which basically constituted a 9/11-like mortality rate every few months in Israel as a percentage of the population. It involved suicide bombings, murdering, maiming hundreds of Jews in restaurants, and Arabs, by the way, and Arabs who got caught up in it. In restaurants, nightclubs, supermarkets, buses, hotels, college campuses, everywhere in Israel. There was no safe place. It was some of the most bloodiest, horrific, most evil periods. Suicide bombers. all supported by Yasser Arafat, all supported by the PLO, and by Hamas, and by Hezbollah. This is what they want from Swarthmore to Gaza? Globalize the Intifada? Is this what they're looking for? A 9/11-like event every couple of months? Thousands of lives, blood spilled everywhere, civilians? This is what today's universities students want. This is what they crave. We've gone from Woodstock to anti-Semitism pretty quickly here. I guess if you understand Woodstock, then it shouldn't really surprise you. So this is the left today. Jewish students at university campuses afraid to identify themselves as Jewish. Ayn Rand once says, she only considers herself Jewish in the face of anti-Semitism. I stand with Ayn Rand on this. I don't think of myself as Jewish, even though I come from Israel and was born Jewish. But in the face of this blatant anti-Semitism, I am Jewish. And in the face of this blatant anti-Semitism, all lovers of liberty should be Jewish. I am Spartacus. We should all stand with these students who are being abused. And we should all stand against this new horrific ideology of hatred, of murder, of bloodshed. Who would have thought that anti-Semitism would be rising in America? Become a real problem in America? It's always been around. I mean, remember, Harvard and a lot of these universities, a lot of the Ivy League universities had quotas in terms of how many Jews they would admit. There were many clubs that did not admit Jews. There probably still are in some places. Maybe not explicitly, but implicitly. But at this level of anti-Semitism, this level of brutality, this level of verbiage, didn't expect it in America. Didn't expect it from the left. But here we are. Somebody asked me, if I don't believe in left and right, why do I still use the terms? Because they're useful. It's not that I don't believe in left and right. There's a difference between the left and the right. There's a difference between anti-Semitism of the left and anti-Semitism, let's say, of the right. It's motivated by different things. It's couched in slightly different language, not much. The left tends to focus more on the Palestinians. The right tends to focus more on just hating Jews. My point is not that left and right are irrelevant. My point is that we, those of us who believe in individual liberty, those of us who believe in capitalism and individualism, are not on that spectrum. My point is that left and right both today define collectivistic attitudes that are very similar, but are somewhat in subtle ways different. And therefore, it's useful to think of the collectivism of the left and the collectivism of the right. But all left and all right today are collectivistic. We stand alone, or mostly alone, on the side of individualism. We are not of the right. We are not of the left. We are of individualism. We are against collectivism. So that's the sense in which I think left and right is useless as a definition of freedom versus lack of freedom. But in terms of defining the different variations of statism and collectivism, yeah, they're useful for that. And to the extent that that's how you use them, go right ahead. When I use them, that's the way I use them. Anti-Semitism of the right, anti-Semitism of the left, not that big a difference, but useful to think in those terms. Not the whole left, not the whole right. The whole left and the whole right, most of the people defining themselves on the left, and most of the people defining themselves on the right, are collectivists. There's a small minority who are individualists. They tend to define themselves more centrists, center left, center right, than they do right and left. Okay. I think we're done with the two topics I had. Where are we with Super Chat? Anybody know? 200 and something? 210, 20, maybe 30, 230. All right, so we got work to do. $400 still to go. We must have some people out there who are willing for a good show like this to put in $400, maybe some $50, maybe some $100. Value for those watching live. Super Chat is obviously not the way those of you who don't watch live support the show. You can support the show with a monthly contribution. Thank you for all the people who do. You make this possible. You can do it on YaronBrookShow.com/supports. I notice a number of new monthly supporters. Thank you to those. Thank you for being traders. Thank you for supporting the show and making the show possible. Patreon, I noticed a new person today on Patreon, and Subscribestar, and of course on Locals. So feel free to use any of those platforms to support the show. I very much appreciate it. And those of you watching live, you have Super Chat. To help support the show, we need about $400 to get to where we need to be in terms of our goals. All right, let's see if we have any $20-like questions. Oh, we have John for $30. John says, today, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that the U.S. Senate will vote this Wednesday on legislation to codify abortion into law. Will this put senators on record? If it goes to the floor, then yes, it'll put them on record. But it also depends on how they structure the legislation, right? If the Democrats structure the legislation in terms of all abortions until birth are allowed, then they'll get no Republican supporters, and indeed they'll get some Democrats voting against this. That's just a reality. They might not even get 50 votes. If they structure it in some more moderate way, as to say abortion up to, I certainly think, you could, for those of you who argue about viability and stuff like that, an abortion bill that went to 22 weeks or something like that, when 98.7%, and maybe an exclusion for rape and incest after that, or life of the mother, or horrific deformities in the child, in the fetus, then I think you could get maybe over 50 votes. You won't get 60, but maybe you could get over 50 votes. So certainly I think this will force people to be on record. But what the record exactly is will depend on the way the bill is presented. And I suspect that the bill will be a kind of a bill coming from the far left, which means full abortion. Now, I support that, but a bill that would allow abortion all the way through. But it won't get a lot of votes. That's my point. So it'll be interesting. Oh, Frank, thank you. Frank just did $50. Let's see. Frank says, with the duality of left and right, could anti-Semitism ever succeed as an integration? Is the anti-aspect just convenient emotionalism? It is, but you could imagine an ideology that as part of its integration, that the thing that it integrated around was exclusionary. That is, for example, the thing that it integrates around is the Aryan race, or the thing that it integrates around is whiteness, or the thing that it integrates around is the things that it integrate around are the proletarian, right? And then it excludes, and that's what integrates. Now, this is the difference partially between the left and the right. The left today is completely nihilistic. It is completely disintegrated. what are they going to integrate around who is more oppressed, around intersectionality? I mean, the whole idea of intersectionality, the whole idea of critical race theory is fundamentally disintegrated. Every little ethnic group, every little minority, every little thing is its own thing, and it has its own agenda, its own logic, and its own whatever. So the anti is built in there, but it's part of this disintegrated philosophy. On the right, there is a more positive integration around religion, around race. On the far right, around nationalism. The left is completely disintegrated. So I think you will see, it's not even around historically marginalized groups, because if it was historically marginalized groups, then attacking Jews would be anti-woke. Jews have always been a marginalized group. It's about who is suffering right now the most. And Jews are always scapegoated as being part of the elites, because today they are part of the elites. So I don't think I think it can be part of an integrated philosophy. The Nazis did it. But on the left, it's not. It's part of a disintegrated philosophy. It's part of their nihilism. They need an other to hate. And of course, bad integrations around race, need others to hate. So the idea of a need of hate of others is always a part of evil ideologies that have nothing really to stand on. Somebody says they start counting Jews as white people. They don't count Jews as white people. They count Jews as much worse than white people. Jews are the worst. All right, let's see if there are any other $20 questions. We did John's. Brian, comedian Norm MacDonald kept he had cancer to his grave. Thought it cool to tell loved ones. Also, he was afraid he'd use it to further fame and social standing. Both sacrificial motives, but I find them noble. Analysis. I mean, there is a certain nobility of not like milking your suffering, to get sympathy from other people. So I find that okay. On the other hand, I don't know who he kept it from. Did he keep it at people he loved? Did he keep it from people he cared? Or did he just not make it public? I completely understand not making it public. It's a private issue. And I don't think it's sacrificial. Now, telling loved ones, I think that's ridiculous because, I mean, loved ones, I think that's a mistake. I don't understand that. I mean, love means sharing, and part of the sharing involves part of the struggles. Again, as long as you don't as long as that doesn't become all-consuming, particularly for your loved ones, they still have to live even if you're going to die. So I think it depends on how you do it, and it depends on your motivation. So I don't think it's always noble. I certainly don't think holding stuff like this back from your loved ones is noble. They don't think it's noble. They want to know. I think it really is an issue of motivation. You can't just look at somebody who does something like that and say, and judge them. I think you really have to understand the context. Jennifer asks, how did Neil Oliver's show go? Did he seem like a good guy? I loved how the conversation went from boring Hunter Biden to the Enlightenment individualism. Yeah, I mean, I thought the conversation went really well. He was super friendly. He'd done a bunch of research on me, and he was like, I want to know more, Yaron. It was like before the show, before the segment and after the segment, he says, look, we need to keep in touch. I want to get your email. I want us to exchange ideas. I'm going to follow you. He's already following me on Twitter. He was super enthusiastic. So which was fantastic because I think he's super thoughtful and super interesting, and I think super influential among the right crowd in the UK. And I think that me being able to influence him and being able to influence Mark Dolan, and he and Mark Dolan had already talked about me before I came on stage. So it was just a super nice conversation, nice environment, and it was super for me because, again, I think I've said this on other shows. I like getting respect from what you'd consider neutral people. Like when I go to objectivist events, everybody, ooh, it's Yaron Brook, he's this, whatever. But I go to like GB News and they're all celebrities there. They all have bigger followings than I do. And it's nice to be treated with respect from these celebrities, right? It's nice for them to say things like that I have impacted them, that I've had an impact on their ideas. So I value that. It's like, I think I told you when I go into this conference and there were all these successful people, and they really responded well to what I had to say, to my ideas. And that was cool because they didn't know who I was necessarily. They weren't there because they were fans. Oh, which reminds me. So I get out of GB News, and I'm walking out of the building there, and I'm in the street waiting for a car to pick me up. And this guy's walking by, and he stops, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Wait a minute, you're Yaron Brook." And he comes up, shakes my hand. "Oh, I listen to all your videos, and I follow you everywhere." So randomly in the street, I said, "Do you work at GB News?" No, he's just walking by. He's a software guy. He's just happens to be walking by, and there I am. That was cool. I like being what my wife calls a mini celebrity, where people recognize me in the street. That's really cool. Anyway, so I very much enjoy my my conversation with Neil. He also has this great Scottish accent, which is really cool. And I actually understood what he said. I was worried about that, right? Because some Scots, it's hard to understand. So I thought it went terrific. I thought the conversation was good. I thought he thought it was good. I thought he thought it was super interesting. He wants to stay in touch. I want to stay in touch. And the same with Mark Dolan. So I've got an in with GB News. In with GB News. Maybe if I move to London, they'll give me a show. Who knows? Maybe I'll move to London. Probably not. All right. Let's see. James. Also $20. By the way, we're at 350. So 250 to go. So we're going to need some people to come in with $100 and $50. You guys always manage to pull it off in the end. So, I know some of you out there have the capacity to get us to where we need and to be traders and to, if you value the show. And I've said all that. All right. James, how do you compare Asia and South America for individualism and objectivism? Is it interesting thinking about how is life different, better, worse for individuals in other countries, Singapore, Hong Kong? I mean, it's really interesting. I think, and I thought this for a while, that that Asia has an immense potential for objectivism. And the primary reason for that is that it's not Christian. It doesn't have Christianity. It doesn't have Jesus on a cross looking down at us. It doesn't have the worst form of altruism just there. Now, right now in the world, objectivism is more popular in Latin America among young people. And I think because objectivism is in Spanish and in Portuguese, and it's talked about, and there are a lot of intellectuals, and we've done a lot of events there. It's just there's been an effort. And language, a lot of South Americans speak English. They interact with America. America is a place. Asia's different. It's a whole different culture. It's a whole different, and objectivism is still viewed as kind of Western and foreign in some sense. But there's, there are active groups in Japan and in Korea and some other places. But probably the place that objectivism has the most potential, and maybe the most adherents, at least at some level, is China. I just spoke in Tbilisi to Lee Schooland. Lee Schooland grew up in China under Mao Zedong, under communism, the worst kind of communism. She left China when she could. She's a big advocate for liberty. She's religious. We disagree. She works at the Acton Institute. She believes religion and liberty are connected. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But she's huge. And anyway, she's very active in China, and she's very active among people who strive for freedom in China. And she told me, I saw her in Tbilisi, she told me that I'm a celebrity in China, that there are a lot of people in China that love my content, and that Ayn Rand is massively popular in China, among business people, among students, among intellectuals who are rebelling, who are voices against the regime. That's amazing. That's amazing. So it's super exciting, but it's going to take decades for that to evolve. And remember, Atlas Shrugged in Chinese, Virtue of Selfishness is in Chinese, Philosophy of Needs is in Chinese, The Fountainhead is in Chinese. My books, Equal and is Unfair and Free Market Revolution, are both in Chinese, and are read and are sold. So, but it'll take time. It'll take time. But I think there's a huge amount of potential in China and in Southeast Asia, even though right now it's not big. All right, let's see. Ever since I said we were 350, it's like quiet, nothing happening. So come on, people, wake up. Got to get 250, $20 questions, $50 questions. Let's get it rolling. Michael asks for $20. We must raise and train an army of fighters for freedom. Yes, Wookiee on that. I feel like one day you may be like John Connor in the Terminator movies. I'm getting a little old for that. John Connor was a young man. Broadcasting from a bunker after the apocalypse, organizing resistance fighters. I hope you're wrong. I hope it doesn't come to that, but it certainly is a possibility. But we do need a younger generation, because Yaron at 80 sitting in a bunker trying to arrange a revolution is probably not ideal. Probably not ideal. Jeffrey for $25. Ayn Rand's writings, especially nonfiction, often include psychological analysis that blows my mind. Absolutely, I agree with you completely. Do you know where her understanding of psychology came from? Yes, I do. Well, not really. How will I put it? I mean, yeah, all of her essays are unbelievable integration of philosophy and psychology. It's what makes her writing unique, because you don't find any other objectivist writing like that, not even Leonard Peikoff. What makes Rand's nonfiction essays so thrilling and interesting and unique, because nobody else in objectivism does this, is this amazing integration of psychology and philosophy. How did she do it? Well, I think it's about being a fiction writer. You cannot be a fiction writer, a good fiction writer, and this is why so many people who try to become fiction writers who don't have this skill are hopeless and useless. You can't be a good fiction writer without knowing a lot about human psychology. Now, I don't think she studied it formally. I just think she, from observation, from introspection, she figured it out. Nathaniel Branden was good in psychology. She was good in philosophy and psychology, which she blew him out of the water in that. Psychology is in every one of her essays. You just have to find it. But it's there. But it's because she had to write characters. She had to figure out their motivation. She had to figure out how they interact, how they behave, what they think, what causes them to do what they do. And she had to be able to express that in ways in her fiction that would captivate the audience. It had to be real psychologically. Think about the scenes of Dagny, I don't know, listening to music, or Reardon trying to figure out what the hell is going on with his life. Struggling with trying to understand his wife, his family, or having the moments of ecstasy with the pouring of Reardon metal. She had a deep understanding of these things that comes from the fact that she was a fiction writer. You cannot be a great fiction writer unless you understand psychology. All great fiction writers are great psychologists in that sense. So I don't know where the knowledge came from, other than I think introspection and observation. I don't think she studied psychology formally. Anyway, that's the best I can do in terms of her knowledge of psychology. All right, let's see. Let's see, no more $20 questions. All right, so we'll go for the lower level questions. There's a bunch of them, so there's plenty of opportunity for you guys to ask questions, but only $20 or more questions now, because I've got plenty of $5, $6, $2 questions. So if you want to ask a question, make it count. Has Ben Shapiro responded to your abortion debate request? It would get millions of views. Not yet, no. Stephen Burns, do you have any ideas of your live lectures coming out soon? I'm thinking of which ones were taped. Not all of them were taped, unfortunately. So some of them are out. Over this next week, I'll put up a couple of live lectures that I've never put out before, that have been up in other channels, but not on my channel. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to, when I get back home, I'll sit down with my assistant. We'll go over all the events I did and figure out where the videos are for the different ones and try to get them up. If I get access to videos, I'll definitely put them up. Ryan says, hi, Yaron, please mention that I'm matching dollar for dollar. Okay, so Ryan is setting up a show. Ryan Ward is trying to get me to do a show on the Ministry of Truth, on the whole issue of misinformation and truth and the government regulating this. He's trying to raise the necessary funds to do this. And he is doing it through GoFundMe, I think. Anyway, go follow Ryan Ward. I don't know what the website is. Maybe I'll put it up on the super chat and I'll tell you. But he's trying to raise money, I guess the $1,000. He'll match every dollar. So he's matching dollar for dollar to get me to do a show on this topic. Alejandro asks, should the U.S. government refuse contracts to group that BDS? God, the U.S. government should just stay out of politics. It shouldn't intervene. It just shouldn't intervene. Refuse for BDS, refuse for other things, refuse, only take minority contracts only made in the U.S. U.S. government should just issue contracts based on ability. It's on GoFundMe, so you can find it at GoFundMe. Ryan Ward. How do you stop caring about politics crime? Well, you can't stop caring about crime because it affects your life directly, and you can do something about crime. That is, if you know there's a lot of crime in your neighborhood, you're careful about going outside and where you go and what you do and how you behave. So crime is something you adapt to. And it's not that you should stop caring about politics, but you should put politics in its appropriate place in your life. There's not a lot you can do about it. There's not a lot you can change about it. So segregate it in your consciousness. Don't allow it to have a significant impact on your ability, on your pursuit of your values, on your happiness. Don't let it get to you. Don't let it depress you. How do you do that? Focus on your values. Understand that it's there. Understand that it's a threat. Listen to shows like mine. Scan the news. Get a sense of what's going on. Vote when you think it's appropriate. Vote when you think it makes a difference. It almost never does. Advocate to the extent that you are passionate about something and the extent that you understand it, the extent that you want to advocate for it. Become an advocate. Make your voice heard. Try to have an influence. But don't let it go deep. Don't let it influence who you are and what you do and how you live and what values you pursue. All right. Let's see. Ori, $20. Why is art an end in itself? I read Atlas Shrugged in part because I thought it would help me achieve greater happiness. Isn't it a means to my achievement of happiness? Where am I going wrong? Well, it's a means to your happiness. Yes, in that sense, it's not an end in itself, right? The point is that it's not there to teach you how to be happy. It's there to help you experience happiness. So it's a direct link to your state of consciousness. It's a direct link to your emotions. It's not there. The reason to read Atlas Shrugged is not for the speeches, not if it's art. The reason to read Atlas Shrugged is for the story, and the speeches are integrated in their story if it's great art, and they are. Right. So art is an end in itself in the sense that it's not, what's the word? God. It's not there to teach you. It's not there to lecture you. It's there to inspire you. It's there to go directly to your emotion, right? So maybe end in itself is the wrong terminology because it has a purpose. It's not that art doesn't have a purpose. The purpose is to inspire you. The purpose is to provide you with what Ayn Rand called fuel for the soul. Right? Its purpose is to inspire you to be happy, to help you achieve that happiness. So it has a purpose. All right. We're at like 385. It looks like we're not going to make 600 today, so we're at closer to 400. All right. But if you do want to ask questions, make them $20 questions, Michael, not $10, $20 questions. I don't see any of the $20 questions. Okay. James, how do you recommend someone reach out to build a relationship through LinkedIn to start a PE firm? Let's say you have the experience. Now what? Wow. I mean, that's a big question, and I don't know exactly. I would, to build out a firm, you would have to start with a team. So you'd have to find the people you want to be your partners. And then, and the way to do that is, well, ideally you partner with people you know and you know well. Ideally you partner with people you've already had a relationship with. P means private equity. You already had a relationship with. You already know. You've already maybe worked together on something. You don't want to start a private equity fund with strangers or somebody you met on LinkedIn. So I don't think LinkedIn is the tool to start a PE fund. Once you have the fund established, you can use LinkedIn to create relationships with business owners, with potential investors. But to actually start a firm, I think you have to use your Rolodex. You have to use people you actually know personally. I wouldn't go in a partnership with strangers. James says, Sunshine feels like a show that takes years to watch. How did you finish it so quickly? Are there any shows similar to it that are faster paced? No, there's nothing. And part of the beauty of it is that it's slow. Part of what makes it beautiful, makes it inspiring, makes it interesting, is the slow pace. So I don't recommend that it be sped up. I enjoy every moment of it. So I'm happy it's slow. And when it ended, I hated that it ended. I wanted it to keep going. It's like Les Miserables is a massive book. I love it that it's a massive book because you live in that universe for longer. You get to know the characters better. You're in that world, and it's fantastic to be in that world. That's what great art does. So I love that it was slow, and it was long, and I don't think it was slow. It's long. It's slow it's slow in a deep sense that the emotions are evolving, the relationships are evolving, there's complexity, there's values building, and there's nothing like, I don't know any TV show like Sunshine. There's Ragnar of the Desert getting us to our goal. Thank you, Ragnar. Really, really appreciate it. But too many of you guys are leaving it up to Ragnar to get us to our goal every time. He's been doing this lately on the shows. We need to get more participation with the bigger bucks. Maybe when I get home, we'll manage to rob people up more. On the road, it seems to be tougher. But there are other people out there that have in the past helped us get to 600. But thank you, Ragnar. Really, really appreciate it. Yeah, Mr. Sunshine is like a 20-course meal with wine pairing, and you just have to sip it and eat slowly and just enjoy it and spend the time and relish it. Just relish it. Every frame is like a beautiful painting. James G says, what was the movie you recommended a year ago about private equity and finance? I know you dislike Barbarians at the Gate. What was the other movie? I think it's Other People's Money. Other People's Money is one of my favorite movies, certainly my favorite movie about finance. Other People's Money. Another one is Working Girl with Harrison Ford and I forget her name. All I remember is she's at the bar talking to Harrison Ford, and she says, I have a mind for business and a bod for sin. And that's one of my favorite lines in movies ever. And she says it with a sultry, sexy voice. A mind for business and a bod for sin. Every woman should have a mind for business and a bod for sin. Anyway, hopefully that wasn't every man should have a bod for business, a mind for a bod for business, a mind for business and a bod for sin. Melanie Griffith, yeah, she was super sexy in that movie. But everybody should be like that, right? We should have a. But anyway, that was a great line. Hiram Bifidum asks, what about Stand With Us, Yaron? Aren't they pro-Israel? I offered to remove vandalism in Lakewood, New Jersey, but they didn't want me to. Yeah, I don't know. Stand With Us, I haven't been involved with Stand With Us for about a decade. Before that, they stayed away from me. They were afraid of me. I was too radical for them. I was too pro-Israel for them. They're pro-Israel in a mild, moderate, don't offend anybody kind of way. And, they didn't like me. They didn't invite me to give speeches. I was too radical. They were too afraid. Anonymous asks, has Israel ever invaded a country, and how many times has it been invaded itself? Additionally, how come Israel doesn't conquer any land? JC Christo, thank you. I'll get to your question in a minute. Let me just answer the quick one from Anonymous. Well, it depends what you mean by invaded. So has Israel invaded a country? Yes, but as an act of self-defense, both in 1956 and in 1967, Israel launched preemptive wars against Egypt, and in 1967 against Syria, and then Jordan intervened, so they had to fight against Jordan as well. But they were Israel, quote, started it, but were clearly They were there to preempt what was going on, and in 56 it was to stop all the terrorist attacks coming out of the Sinai desert. They ended up giving back the Sinai in both cases to the Egyptians. They never gave back the Golan Heights to Syria because Syria has remained belligerent, remained hostile to Israel. How come Israel doesn't conquer any land? Well, arguably it has. It has conquered the Golan Heights, and it has sustained it, and it conquered, if you will, as an act of self-defense, but it still conquered it, the West Bank, and still keeps the West Bank under Israeli rule. So it's not clear. You have to be much more careful in how you're defining things to clarify what exactly you meant. Jace Christo for $50 American, I think. What are your thoughts on nepotism? I'm against it. Is the whole world about who you know and if they like you? Or can a man truly make it big his own way if he's good and works hard? I think you can still make your own way. It's getting harder maybe, but you can still do it your own way. Look at Elon Musk, look at Steve Jobs, look at Jeff Bezos, look at all the entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. They made it their own way. They didn't make it because they're nepotists. They didn't make it because they're nice. They didn't make it because of who they know. They made it because of who they are and their ability and their hard work. And that's still true. And it's still possible. Oh, I'm reminded in 1982 in Lebanon. Yes, Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982, again, as an act of self-defense, but it did invade Lebanon. It did occupy Lebanon for a while. It then retreated from all of Lebanon. The occupation was a mistake. I mean, there are a lot of problems with the Israeli foreign policy, but it is true that, yes, in 1982, I was in the army. I was one of the occupiers of Lebanon. I actually made it up to Beirut in 1982. A happy avocado. Will it take another Park Hotel-like attack for Israel to respond? How many more deaths until something will be done? Well, there's no end to it, right? I mean, Israel hasn't done anything for years and years and years. It didn't really do that much during and after the Second Intifada. It basically gave the Palestinians Gaza as a reward for the Second Intifada. So Israel has not. I don't think it's anything that can be done. I often say people don't learn from experience. You have to change their ideas. And altruism dominates the Israeli response. Weakness dominates the Israeli response. And so I don't see that changing anytime soon. God, it's already 11:15 over here. It's late, but we did make 600. Thanks to Ragnar the Desert and the rest of you guys. We made it, so thank you, everybody. All right, we've got a few short questions. I'll do these quickly. Do you think that the UK is better at integration? I don't know, and I don't know what that even means. You mean people who from the educational system? Probably, they're probably better thinkers. They probably know more because the American educational system is so bad. The UK one is better. But I don't think it's, I think that's more at the margin. I don't think it's a dominant. All right, let's see. Michael asks, do you not eat fruit as well because of the sugar content? How do you replenish after a hard workout without carbs? I do eat fruit. I don't eat a lot of fruit, but I do eat fruit. I particularly eat berries that are low in sugar. But I eat fruit. I drink fruit juice periodically. But again, fruit juice that has relatively less sugar. But I don't exclude sugar from my diet. I just control how much sugar I have. And when I do eat sugar, I try to have it from natural sources, from fruit, for example. But look, I know that when I eat at restaurants, my sauces and stuff has sugar in it. So I'm not super at this. How do I replenish after a workout? I don't know. I just eat whatever. And I do eat carbs. I eat vegetables. Vegetables are carbs. And you can replenish after a workout. It's probably best to eat protein anyway. All right. Hi, Yaron. I think you should debate Stephen West from Philosophize This. He has a lot of followers. On one of his episodes is Ayn Rand a philosopher? You would crush him. Thanks. All right. I've made a note. It's on my list. I'll try to get to him. Frank asks, recently a man immolated himself at the Capitol. I guess he burned himself alive to protest climate change. Why does a person get like this? How did he fall victim to such evil altruism? You know, it used to be that people used to do a lot more than this. Burning themselves, particularly in Asia. It was something about Asia. I don't know. Depressed. People feel like they can't have an impact in the world. Like me, sometimes people feel like they have no voice. They need to get people's attention. I think that's how we get to that. But it really is a sad sign of in terms of human life when we get to something like that. All right, Michael asks, if you do your show at unpredictable random times, it's going to be impossible to consistently make $600 shows. True. Although it's been amazing how consistently we have made $600 shows. But yes, it is going to be harder. We'll get back to having a schedule soon. Micah says, I think Ayn Rand may have been the best introspector to have ever lived. Hard to tell, but yeah, she was a great introspector. It couldn't have been the author, the artist, and the... I think all artists, good artists, have to be introspectors. But yes, she had to be an exceptional one to be as exceptional as she is as an artist. Wooksin Song wants you on to watch Itaewon Class, a Korean show. Okay, I'm putting it on the list. I'm not sure who Wooksin Song is. By the way, anybody here listening from Korea, if there's anybody listening from South Korea, can you drop me an email? Because I'm coming to South Korea in September, and I'd like to organize some events. I know there's some of you listening who are from Korea. So, Wooksin Song is just on the. So if you're in Korea, drop me an email, yaron@yaronbookshow.com, yaron@yaronbookshow.com, or message me on Twitter or something. But I'd like to get together when I'm in Korea. So please let me know if you live in Korea and you're an objectivist. Hiram says, oh no, Yaron, you reached over, yeah, we're at 680. Yeah. I have good supporters. Yeah. Particularly, Ragnar of the Desert, who sweeps in at the end of shows and gets us over the mark, particularly when I'm traveling and on an irregular schedule. Okay, Tessie says she loved Working Girl. Happy Sunday. Yes, watch Working Girl and watch other people's money. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for getting us over the $600 mark. Thanks for all the super chatters. Thank you for all the monthly supporters. You too can become a monthly supporter at yaronbookshow.com/support, Patreon, and Subscribe Star. I'll probably not have any shows this week. Probably have a show on Sunday. We'll definitely have a show on Sunday. I'll be back home. But this week, I'm with my wife on vacation, going to great restaurants. Too tired and full of food when I get back to the hotel to do a show. So probably no shows. I'll see you all on Sunday. Have a great week. Don't forget, again, to subscribe to the show. You can also join the show on YouTube. You can do all these fun things. I think when we get to 100 subscribers for the show on YouTube itself, not subscribers, like members on the show, we'll do some special stuff. All right, everybody. Maybe we'll do a members only show. How about that? But you have to join. There's a join button right at the bottom there. Press the join button.